Hi, y'all. It's Brigitte with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Andrea McKenna Brankin. She is a journalist, author, a mental health advocate, and an expat living in Singapore. Can you say hi, Andrea?
Hi y'all.
Well, Bridget is in Georgia in the southeast. And I started saying that Bridget Cutshall, y'all, just to be kind of funny. But I
It's
think
cool.
you
Well, I
understand.
should say ni hao for
Yeah.
Chinese. Yeah.
You just have to blend it in and bring a little humor into your conversations. And
Yeah, a
that's
little personality.
you have to, that's my personality. I've always been a little sarcastic. I don't know why. Probably because I had an older brother who took care of me. That's probably what it's from. Um,
Mhm.
anyway, that back in the day, it was a little different back then. It is different now. I guess the first thing that popped into my mind is what prompted you to become a mental health advocate? Because that is a topic more people are
Yeah.
being open about.
Yeah. I have bipolar disorder, and that's how I became an advocate was when I was diagnosed. I wrote a book called Bipolar Phoenix. It's on Amazon.com and Kindle. And it actually talks about how I learned that I was bipolar and I had sort of depression and some crazy behavior. And then I had a divorce and my life kind of fell apart. And I had actually suicide attempts, and then they said, okay, you don't just have depression, you have bipolar disorder. And I said, oh my God, I thought I was so unique. And there was this list of symptoms of bipolar disorder. And it was like, yep, 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 that's me, that's me. I thought, oh, I thought I was so original. But turns out, that I represent a group of people in this world that have bipolar disorder, which is a mood disorder. It goes from very high lows, very, very low lows to very high highs. So we have mania and hypomania, and we have depression, major depression. And somewhere in the middle, we have that sort of sweet spot of functionality. And for myself, I've always been very highly functioning. I've always had work, jobs, relationships. They weren't always great because I made bad decisions because of my mental health. But anyway,
You know
going
what?
back to your question, it was the bipolar diagnosis that made me want to get into mental health advocacy and help some other people really share the information.
I think what is good is that I should say psychologist, is it a psychologist or a psychiatrist involved?
Both,
Both.
both. Yeah.
I think it's good that they're doing more research and understanding this better to help people because, like we mentioned before here at recording, we didn't talk about this stuff. You kind of hid it. You didn't want to be seen as an outsider. But I
If
think our culture is becoming more open to this and supportive and compassionate, right?
100%. And I grew up in America. I was in America most of my life until when did 39, I think I moved here, 40 years old. And they weren't really talking a whole lot about mental health until after I left. But it's really become in the last 10, 15 years a really big topic. The empathy has increased, the education has increased, the understandings have increased. The media has increased in terms of people talking about it, but also movies and film and TV and books, and I have my book, which came out in 2020, to talk about my life with bipolar disorder. So there's definitely been a shift in interest. Back when you and I were younger, no one was talking about it and nobody knew, and you didn't tell anybody, and it was shameful. And now we're getting past the stigma, not completely, but a lot of work towards getting past the stigma for mental health, and talking about mental health and talking about mental illness and accepting people who have mental illness so they can have a full life, which I'm very lucky I have. And
You
I can
are
tell you
lucky.
in Singapore, they are working very hard to educate their public on mental health issues and teaching people how to listen. And they have programs on how to support someone. So it's worldwide. And the World Health Organization is reporting as well that there is more emphasis on mental health, and we're getting there. So
I like
positive.
what you're saying and sharing because I also think this is my perspective that the mental health aspect also affects your physical health, correct? It could have
100%.
it's they're all connected. Your brain's connected to your body. And um, is this genetic usually, or is it just like your environment, maybe? Just curious.
Okay. So it's nature and nurture. It's both. There is a genetic factor. The scientists have now identified the genes that cause bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. There's one more, but definitely those two, they have identified the gene. So it is in the families. I have at least one cousin, maybe two, who have bipolar disorder, but of course we don't know who in our family had it before us, because like nobody was talking about it. Everyone was just drinking gin and tonics, so I mean, we don't know like how far back this goes. But I mean, my dad was a World War II veteran, and he barely talked about his experiences with
Yeah,
the war alone.
they suppressed. That probably didn't help, and that's yeah.
They just said don't talk about that negative things or things that make other people uncomfortable. So, um,
And just like you mentioned the military stuff, I'm a military brat. My father and my stepfather were in Vietnam, and my mom's second husband, he had PTSD. He got
yeah.
shot and survived. And so I saw some behavior in him that was different than my real dad. My real father wasn't wounded. So it's a difference. And I don't know what kind of support, my stepfather, I should say stepfather, my second dad, the one that raised me, what kind of support he got. But I noticed, I just noticed things like maybe he was naturally bipolar. I don't know that, you know what I'm saying?
Well, trauma can really do a number on your brain chemistry. So, and that's to the next point, which is environmental. You have your nature, how you're born, and then you have environmental for like the where you live and the house and the family and the community and your job, and those kind of things can trigger mental health issues in some people. And for me, like my major triggers are usually environmental, usually something like, with like a family event, or even an unhappy encounter with someone will really upset me. I'm a very, sensitive person. And so there is that nurture part where, something on the TV could upset someone. I'm not saying they're fragile, some people are, but the point is that it does affect people differently when they have the propensity, the leaning towards that brain chemistry that might be bipolar disorder or depression or anxiety. So, and certainly trauma of war and being injured would also trigger those same types of things.
Right. He also gave me some good positive stuff, right? He always told me, I was born in the 60s and grew up, he always, which I thought was good. I'm a girl, Bridget, you're a girl, you can do anything you want. So I like that. I got that positive side from him, and he wanted to teach me hunting. I'm like, no, thank you. My brother was into that, not me, and so parents are trying to do the right thing, right? And that is something that as my kids are adults now, I've learned a lot. I respect even though he had these issues, I try to respect empathy, excuse me, that's a better word, of what he probably was dealing with. And I grew up, like I said, around the military, moved around a lot. And so I was probably more, I should say, laid back. I just pulled back a little bit. I tried not to, because I saw so much drama. Maybe that's why I'm independent mindset. It's I don't know, and I'm just so glad to have the experience and meeting people like you. And one thing I want to mention, my mother became a psychologist. Okay.
Oh, okay. My sister's a psychologist and a professor of psychology.
Right. And I think it has something to do, I personally think that she probably did it because to help herself heal. That's my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, because she was born during World War II. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe when that was going 1940,
Oh, right. In France. Yeah.
1941. Right.
Wow.
So there's I just think we need to learn and understand, respect history and what people are dealing with. And empathy, I think for some reason, some people downplay it. And I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
think it,
there's a lot of argument about empathy bringing the society down, which is, and I have a different perspective in the sense that I need people to be empathetic about my experience and my life and my illness. I hate to think that society would turn their backs and not be empathetic again, because it doesn't make you weak.
no, it
But
doesn't. We just need
let's not politicize empathy either. I mean,
correct.
geez.
That's what I'm seeing. It's not just here in the US. Globally, I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of anger going on. And I don't know if is being triggered. Some people say it's being triggered by the internet. I don't know. Social media. I don't know.
They thought MTV was going to ruin us too, and Walkmans and all that, and we are fine. So
Correct. That's why I don't
I,
know. Right. I have no opinion on that. We just want to support people. We need to give them some empathy and want them to get a counselor, write it down. I think maybe that's why you started writing, right? I think
100%.
writing
Yeah.
is therapeutic in a way.
Very, very. So I'm a journalist, and I've been a journalist since I was 19 years old. So it's going on upwards of 30 years now. Radio, TV. Did a lot of magazine and online writing and newspaper and newsletters and stuff like that. So writing a book was very natural to me. It was a matter of when I wrote the book in terms of when I had time, which was when I moved to Singapore and I wasn't working full time. So I had the time to sort of process what had happened to me and take the best part of my experience and say, well, what can I write about that people can learn from in terms of building, like talking about resilience? And these are all the things that I did to recover and live with bipolar disorder. So it's things like stay connected to your community by volunteering, doing yoga and exercise, taking care of yourself. I had a dog. My family adopted a dog for me when I was in a really bad place mentally, and they rescued a pit bull from death row and in the pound, and we trained him as a psychiatric service dog, and he was the first one in the state of Connecticut. So this was in about 2003, 2004, something like that, maybe 2003. And he wasn't just a companion. He had things that he did for me. We trained him to remind me to take my medication in the morning. We trained him to be security for me. We trained him to do tactile stimulation, which is to put his paws up on me if I was getting hysterical or getting upset. So those were 3 tasks that a service animal must qualify to do to become a service animal. But for psychiatry, this was very new. And now you see people on planes, you see people with the vests, and a lot of them are veterans because they have like your in your family, the PTSD, and the animals, the psychiatric service dogs are very helpful. So for me, like having a dog was something that built my resilience. It gave me confidence to walk outside because I had the pit bull with me, and he was a great dog. His name was Loki.
I love dogs in general, and I think you're it's a really good experience that you had. And there's a movie or a documentary on Netflix called The Inside the Mind of a Dog, and they talk about that dogs adapted to help us humans.
Yeah.
And I like dogs, I think, because my first dog that I had, my father gave to me. I don't know how old I was, 3 or 4. He was a German Shepherd, and I didn't see my dad because he had go to Vietnam and all that stuff. So that's kind of how that dog supported me, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Realize
I
that.
certainly believe in animal support and therapy and wonderful things that animals can do. I specifically had one for psychiatric, which is a step up because it's part of your mental health recovery plan. It's like taking your medicine. You have your dog, so and that's why they have a little more status, like on an airline or in a
Yeah.
mall, whatever, is because they're actually providing a medical service for their person.
Is there a
But very,
particular
very useful.
is there a particular breed? Do you think that is
I don't.
I'm just curious.
I rescued a pit bull, and he was fantastic, and he was smart, and
There's
he wanted to help. They do a lot of rescuing with pit bulls. They do like 9/11. They had a lot of pit bulls, and
I think
not just
pit bulls have a bad reputation just because how the media
sadly.
writes about them, and they're really supposed to be sweet dogs. My oldest son was in the veterinary field. He said it's actually the pit bulls are the best, and it's the German shepherds that are more likely to react.
Yeah, they're dog reactive too.
You're
Yeah,
very
a lot
dog
of,
reactive,
mhm.
and so I have to. That's one thing I try to put on my kids, like, dogs, reading, and just reading is so important, I think, as well. That helps you see the world differently than watching it on video. I know that's just my perspective.
Yeah.
And I think writing is really good. And I like um, what you're doing to help other people. And you've lived in Singapore for, like you said, almost 10 years. And are you?
Yeah, 14 actually total,
Oh,
but 10
oh,
years. Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I probably didn't give you the years, but
It's okay. So are you a
14.
parent? I'm assuming you're.
I am a parent. I have a 13-year-old daughter who's sitting across the room there while reading her phone. And she was born here in Singapore as a bona fide American citizen 4 hours after her birth. No worries. She is 100% American. And we live here. We're raising her here. My husband is an executive, and this is just where he's built his career. So he's American as well. He's from Chicago.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but
I also, your background, you grew up and moved to different parts of the U.S. before you
I
became an
did.
expat.
Yeah, more than most people at the time. I mean, this was the late 80s, not early 90s. And I went to school. I mean, I grew up in Mystic, Connecticut, where Mystic Pizza was filmed and, um, tourist town, coastal town, sailboats, lobster, stuff like that. And I went to school in Boston, which was very common for a lot of us in New England to want to go to school in Boston. And that to me was a big city. But then I got my first job in New York and London.
Those are
First
big
job,
cities. Those are big cities. Yeah.
very big.
They're,
So I did about a year in London, and then I was in New York City. That was my big time break. So I loved it.
I'd like visiting those big cities, but I wouldn't want to live there. That's just me.
Yeah.
Just,
I always, because I'm from such a small town, I always wanted to live in the city, always. And I have since then. I moved to Chicago, which is where I spent the most of my adult life was in Chicago. And then moving out to Singapore, we're a major international hub here. So I'm still in a big city. It just happens to be its own country.
I live near Atlanta. I always wanted to live, because it's diverse. I don't know why. I visited here when I was young. I lived by military bases, but then when I graduated from college, the company I was working for at the time gave me the opportunity to move to Atlanta and they paid for it and I never left. And my husband,
Yeah, see?
there's something about, I don't live downtown, but I live in the suburbs. And there's just something about, I like the diversity of it. I
Yeah,
like,
I always like that.
that's probably why I like Chicago, New York. And my stepfather, by the way, the one that raised me, he's from Chicago. And
Okay.
I found an article about him and his brother. They were, I, back then you had to go to the military, but I think they, I'm not sure how the age apart, they were like 2 or 3 years apart. And his older brother went, he came back and became a priest
Oh,
because,
wow.
which is right. No wonder he must,
Environmental influence.
he became, we're like, I didn't really know that. I just knew my stepfather wanted me to be raised as a Catholic. I didn't understand that. But I think my mother was that way from being raised in France.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it's just, he taught me, I just look at, stuff he taught me. And that's what you're learning. You're probably teaching your daughter.
I hope
And
so. Yeah,
yeah,
resilience is big. And in the schools, she's in an international school, and there are kids from all over the world, English speaking, and uh, well, I mean, everything is taught in English, but they take language just like other kids. But they do teach resilience in terms of how to literally bounce back from a challenge, whether it's academic challenge or an athletic challenge. I'm a rugby coach, so I coach teenage girls, and we have to accept that we lost, and how are we going to manage that, and how are we going to look at our next week and our next practice. I mean, resilience is everywhere you look. There's an opportunity to be resilient, and it's all about practice. Like people say, well, some people are born that way. And I think like my daughter is pretty resilient on her own. I needed to work at it. I had to practice. Like I had to practice writing everything down. I had to practice meditation, practice yoga, practice taking my medicine, practice going to the doctor, going to the psychologist, going to therapy. Everything took work, and it took years. And I'm not saying that it's like not worth it. It's 100% worth the work that you put in. But I feel like in mental health, a lot of people say, well, I'm just not like that. Or I'm just not, I'm not like you, Andrea. And I'm like, well, it took a lot for me to be where I'm at, be resilient, be strong, bounce back. And I struggle. I still have trouble being resilient, bouncing back. But I still look back on my book and say, well, what are the things that worked for me in the past? And you mentioned health and nutrition. 100%. If your body feels good, your mind can feel good. Now it can go the other way where you don't feel great, But that's when you really have to, jump in and start taking care of yourself, because it's mental health decline that will interrupt the quality of your life and your ability to function every day. So that's why resilience is such an incredible skill to build and learn. I mean, if you're born with it, woo, amen. That's awesome. But I think it's something we all have to really work on, you
I
know?
I agree, and I also think resilience is connected to adapting because of change. Change has always been there.
Which is
People
hard.
complain but you have to learn to adapt to get. I think resilience is like getting knocked down, picking yourself up, and you have to make a change. And
Yeah.
sometimes some people don't want to, and they're so
No,
stuck, and
it's hard. And they don't know how to. And I get people that reach out to me sometimes and say, I'm also bipolar, or I think I'm bipolar. What do I do? And I'm like, okay, first of all, like for me, I was treated medically. So I, had suicide attempts, and I was in the hospital, and they put me on medication that absolutely saved my life. Why? Because it made me stop thinking about killing myself. Amazing medicine, number one for me personally. I know there's some people that say, well, I don't want to take medication, or I don't want to rely on a pill. And I'm like, why? It's the greatest gift that science has ever
right,
given
right.
us, is the ability to live a quality life with a pill that I take every day. Thank God. Because otherwise, where would I be if I had to do it on my own? You know. But
I
that's always step one for me, is get out the door and go see the doctor and go see someone to help your mental health.
right. Don't try to isolate yourself. I think that's
Yeah.
what affects people. And I guess as you were talking about that, the suicide stuff, I'm sorry to hear that happen to you. What do you think for the younger generation? It just seems like it seems to be happening more, or is it happening more suicides, or the younger generation? I don't know if I'm
I
just
haven't looked at the stats from the World Health Organization, but there are some countries where the younger people are more affected. Um, in Singapore, they are very intense on education, and they have had to lighten up some of their rhetoric around achieving, to let these kids have a little bit of a break, because they were having anecdotal incidents where kids were turning to suicide and dying by suicide. In the US, I'm not 100% sure about any of the updated stats, but I can tell you that with bipolar people, it's about a 50% chance that they have tried to or will try to commit suicide. About 19% succeed. It's a hell of a stat.
that's
And it hasn't changed very much. And the World Health, WHO, backs that mostly. What I will say is that what the kids have today that I didn't have, that people like me didn't have, our age people didn't have, and before us, was somewhere to go to get help. There's a hotline now. Now there's text messages. There's online therapists. There's Facebook will say, "Are you okay? Hey, check on this person. They just put up a post that sounds like they might hurt themselves. Okay, let's have a check." Wellness checks, online checks. There's just so much more connectability and access to help. I think we've been able to reduce the stigma, along with increasing the technology to have access to help, which is making the phone call, going to the doctor, telling the teacher, telling your mom. And your mom's been educated. Why? Because she read it on the internet or whatever, or there's programs that are educating families, TV shows, lots of internet support on that, and even like AI or Wikipedia that might say, well, what is bipolar? How do I help myself? And that stuff we didn't have anybody. You're just
yeah.
staring at a blank wall going, I feel horrible, and I can't tell anyone because I'm ashamed and they're going to yell at me. And you know what? They did yell at you, and they did lock you away.
They did.
So
Yeah.
they did. So I think today I don't know how, if the stats have changed a lot since I wrote my book, but I'm just saying that there's a lot more access towards help. And the Samaritans is an international organization, and there's the World Suicide Hotline. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I can get you that list. It's actually in my book too.
Okay.
Um, yeah, Andrea McKenna 13 at Gmail.
At Gmail. I guess one last question is, what is one takeaway for the listeners that they need to do if they're struggling? What is one takeaway?
Well, it's leading right into what we were talking about, and that is to look in the mirror and say, do you want to help yourself? Yes, I want it. Do you want to feel better? Do you want to function? If the answer is yes, even if the answer is no, call someone, get some help, ask someone, ask a friend, even employers now are supportive. I have some horror stories in my book about really bad employers that were not supportive of me with a mental health condition, but nowadays they are looking out for their people. Mental health is on the rise in terms of awareness and empathy. So, find a trusted person, whether that's maybe it's your dentist, maybe it's your dog walker, and say, I'm feeling really bad. You got any suggestions of where I could go? Or call your primary care doctor. They can treat depression, they can treat bipolar disorder, they can treat all that. What they will do is advise you to see a specialist as needed. But your first line of defense could and should be your doctor. That's my opinion. That's what worked for me. So, but a trusted adult that can advise you, or a friend, if you're already an adult,
Right.
that's what I would say is ask for help. You can do it. You can do it. And if you have to make the call or have someone else make the call for you, then you ask that friend to make the call for you. And there you are asking for help. So don't be afraid to go out there. You're not alone. There's a lot of us out there. We're doing fine. It's going to be okay.
It will be, and just my thing is to be honest when you're sharing everything. I mean, you don't have to tell everything up front in the beginning, but you just need to reach out. I agree with that.
Right. It
I
can be
love
treated. Mental health issues are very treatable, very manageable if you put the time in, if you put the focus on it and you take care of yourself. But really, you're not alone. Anyone out there who's struggling, you're not alone. Do a little internet search where you can get some help. Might be down the street, might be online. So,
Where can people learn more about you, Andrea? What websites?
okay. So I have bipolarphoenix.com is my website, and my book is on Amazon.com, Bipolar Phoenix, My Effed Up Life and How I Fixed It, available on Kindle and print all over the world. Bipolarphoenix.com, and my email is Andrea McKenna 13@gmail. If you ever want to drop me a line or ask a question, you need some help, I can direct you towards the right set of information. And I'm also on social media, which is pretty easy to find. So,
But you just kind of just put in your name, I guess you'll find
you
it.
put in my name, it'll come up because I write articles about mental health. So they'll come up
I
as
love that.
yeah.
For those that are listening, I'll include the links that Andrea mentioned in the description just in case. And I appreciate your time, Andrea, and everybody if you're driving, be careful when you're listening. That's what I'm such a mom. Be careful. And anyway, well, thank you so much, Andrea. It's very, very helpful and I think it's inspiring. We just need to have, more conversations like this. That's why I started my Real Things Living podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Brigitte. Nice to talk to you. Nice to meet y'all.
Yeah. Bye, y'all. Thanks.